What is up, YouTube? My name is CJ. This is CJ Knows Tech, and today Apple just did a brand new refresh in 2020 to the MacBook Pro 13-inch lineup. They're giving us quad-core goodness and a couple of other things, but there are a few things that are missing in comparison to the refresh we got with the 16-inch MacBook Pro that I kind of want to point out. And I just want to share my expertise in MacBook Pros and help you guys make a really good decision in the MacBook Pro that you're gonna pick, whether it be the 13-inch or if I maybe even talk you up to a 16-inch. Because once we dig a little deeper into the offerings, like overall in this lineup, there's a few things that isn't quite there and there's a few things that are. And let's just break down Apple's marketing and what we are actually being given with this 13-inch MacBook Pro. So the first thing I want to point out about this MacBook Pro 13-inch is the fact that if you were shopping a brand new 13-inch MacBook Pro, well, you're in luck because the refresh has hit, and this is when you want to buy because this is the freshest of the fresh that Apple has to offer. But the reality is this is somewhat of an iterative, it's kind of a bland update. So we can't expect leaps and bounds like 14-inch displays and so forth to happen right now because there's a lot of delays in technology. Okay, now there's a couple of things to think about when you're getting a MacBook Pro, and some of the things that I just want to consider. Shopping a MacBook Pro, I'm assuming you're looking to do some of the similar things that I do with my MacBook Pro 16-inch. That could be video editing, audio editing, graphic editing, you know, photography, high-end productivity, coding, things like that. You have to consider the fact that 13-inch MacBook Pros do not have a dedicated graphics card. That's one of the missing items of the MacBook Pro 13-inch that I don't think we could ever see because of the chassis size. But maybe if they did go up to the 14-inch body and increased it by a certain amount, maybe we could actually see dedicated graphics in the MacBook Pro 14-inch. But there are a couple other things that I want to point out that are missing from this brand new MacBook Pro 13-inch, just to help you be aware so you know what you're getting yourself into. Now, we did not get any mentions of an upgraded speaker system. Now, with the 16-inch MacBook Pro and with the iPad Pro, all of the Pro items lately have been getting speaker upgrades. So there's been a huge focus of audio with Apple as of lately. It seemed that they didn't have as much of an audio focus with this 13-inch MacBook Pro. Maybe because it's iterative, maybe because of product delays and parts and things like that. And maybe it's because we didn't get the 14-inch body, but there's no mention of any speaker upgrades. And that's kind of disappointing because the speakers that they put in this MacBook Pro 16-inch are amazing. Now, I'm not taking away from the 13-inch speakers that are currently on there, but the fact of the matter is that if we have the option and the availability to have an upgraded speaker system from Apple, I'm going to warrant that and enjoy that even more. So if you do decide to settle for this speaker system, you're not getting a terrible system. I just want to set that clear, but I was just a little shocked not to see the more improved, you know, higher end focus of audio. And with me speaking of audio, I'm going to talk about the other thing that's missing: no improved microphones. On the 16-inch MacBook Pro, same with the iPad Pro, we were given an upgraded microphone system for better audio capture. So no microphone upgrades as well as no speaker upgrades. It's pretty much like they're serving you last year's 13-inch MacBook Pro chassis and all. But there is improved quad-core 10th generation. Only the $1,799 model as well as the $1,999 model, the $1,800 and $2,000 models, have the brand new 10th generation quad-core chips and processors in them. This is something to be very careful because on the marketing it says up to 10th generation quad-core. So the thing about the marketing with the upgrade of the quad-core 10th generation, we have to be very clear that it's only on the two higher end, upper end models that cost more in the $1,800 to $2,000 range, which is getting very close and tiptoeing near the base model 16-inch MacBook Pro, which we're going to talk about that towards the end of this video. Now, the biggest improvement that everybody could have a sigh of relief with these brand new MacBook Pro 13 inches is the fact that they have the brand new Magic Keyboard. Well, not brand new, but the better keyboard. This keyboard is the keyboard you want if you're going to get a MacBook Pro. So, you know, a lot of people might try to tell you, oh, save some money and get the older model, but you're getting that butterfly keyboard, and that is not the keyboard you want to invest in. Remember, when you buy a MacBook Pro, this is a sealed chassis. There's no room for upgrades. The reality is you don't want to be stuck with that butterfly keyboard. Apple has bit the bullet and admitted that the butterfly keyboards aren't the best by replacing them with these brand new scissor switch Magic keyboards. It's not technically new, but it's the technology that's proven, tried and true, and worth the investment into a MacBook Pro. One of the biggest things you have to really consider when you're making your choice and which model and which features and upgrades that you input before you make your purchase is the fact that this is a sealed chassis. There's no redos, there's no takey backs. But once you've chosen what you're gonna stick with, you gotta stick it out. That's why you have to be very conscious and very thoughtful in the upgrades and RAM and so forth, graphics cards. You have to be mindful of what you're choosing. And you want that to prolong you however long you choose to own and operate this MacBook Pro. So be very mindful in the amount of RAM that you're gonna pick. If you're gonna be doing high-end video editing or, intensive workflows, I advise you to get your RAM now. Same thing with the hard drive. I think this is a place where a lot of people try to cut corners because you can always plug in an external hard drive and off-put data, but let's be realistic. Is that the most convenient way to handle your storage? No. And let's also be realistic at the fact that Apple charges an arm, a leg, everything for upgrades on storage. So just find a good medium that works for your budget and value-wise, and as well as your longevity, because you do not want to max out your onboard storage. That's terrible for the hard drive. It's gonna be terrible for your MacBook Pro. So give yourself enough headroom there. Graphics cards. And this is something I really want you to think about. No 13-inch MacBook Pro has a dedicated graphics card. Consider that. If you're gonna get this for video production and intensive workflows and video editing, you might wanna consider the 16-inch with a dedicated graphics cards, even the base model with the i7 with more cores, not too far from the higher end 13-inch MacBook Pro, which actually has the new 10th generation quad-core chips. Because for the difference that you're gonna pay, it's well worth it for the graphics cards. You can see yourself expanding your video workflow. Because these new graphics cards that they put in the 16-inch MacBook Pro are powerful. If you don't believe me, you could go watch my video. I put the base model i7 MacBook Pro 13-inch against a spec'd out 15-inch with the Vega this and Vega that. And that base model graphics card held its own. Now in this MacBook Pro 16-inch, I have an i7 and then I have the highest end graphics card in it for headroom. I have about 32 gigabytes of RAM and I have a 1 terabyte hard drive, which in the future, the next time I configure a MacBook Pro, I want a huge onboard storage. I'm gonna consider probably a 4 terabyte. Whew, I'm sweating now just thinking about the price, Lord. But the fact of the matter, that's me. And that's why I want you to really think about you and what fits your needs when you're picking this computer for your longevity and use case. Okay, I'm finna be really honest about MacBook Pros. They're really good. I've even owned and used base model 13-inch MacBook Pros when they started to get into the new generation chips because of that simple fact. So I purchased a couple while I was traveling and I used them for 4K editing. But my workflow has changed and it has intensified since then, and they just served the purpose then. But it just shows the fact that if you're using Final Cut Pro, let me just stress this point. Final Cut Pro on the 13-inch with no dedicated graphics cards equals good video editing because it's optimized to use the metal and so forth, so you can get a pleasant experience. However, in the age of people wanting to shoot high-end video and 4K and so forth, yes, it can handle it, but I don't think it's ideal for longevity and it being your main workstation. Now, if you have something bigger and more powerful sitting in the cut that you would do your high-end editing with, then maybe you can skate past with the 13-inch. But you gotta be real conscious and think about it. The reason why I did a 16-inch MacBook Pro and I built it the way that I did, because when you're traveling, I wanna be able to take my system with me. I don't wanna have to feel like, oh, I'm missing this data and I have to transfer over from the iMac Pro to the MacBook Pro. So as of right now, the MacBook Pro 16-inch is my main editing station. I didn't intend for it to be, but that's kind of how it worked out. And the graphics cards on this are amazing. That's why I'm kind of trying to give you a little wisdom and just thought, food for thought, so that you can make the right decision. Because if you're finna spec out a 13-inch MacBook Pro, these new ones, you might want to look at the base model 16-inch. Now, that does come at a price of size and weight and a little bit more moolah. But if you can stomach the 16-inch MacBook Pro size and the extra weight over the 13-inch, I think you're gonna get more bang for your buck. But I'm not taking away from the 13-inch because, as I said earlier, I've used it for high-end editing in Final Cut. Now, if you're gonna be stubborn, you're gonna be using Adobe apps like Adobe Premiere Pro. I know that they have improved them over recently, supposedly. I haven't tried it or tested it to see, but honestly, if you're on a Mac system, Final Cut Pro is the way to go. If you're gonna do your video editing and you're sold on the 13-inch, be sure that you configure it right, give it a nice amount of RAM, and go for the 10th generation quad core if you can. But the reality is, it doesn't have a dedicated graphics card. You're kind of limiting yourself without the dedicated graphics card, which is why I urge you, and I just kind of want to encourage you, depending on what you're trying to do. Now, if your workflow, you saying, hey CJ, I don't need all of that. I can get right along with this. I'll probably just be doing a little 1080 here and there, maybe a little 4K. Well, then the 13-inch is your workhorse and probably your use case. Just build it correctly. If you're a little bit more on the higher end, or if in between the time of you owning this MacBook Pro, you think you might cross over into higher end video editing, you gotta future-proof yourself. And I would highly recommend you go with the 16-inch. You're getting those new speakers, you're getting that new microphone system, you're getting an amazing dedicated graphics card. I just wanted to share my wisdom, share my food for thought, and just kind of throw those things out there before you make a decision. You go run and, oh, it's the latest, newest 13-inch MacBook Pro. But hey, let's be real. It's the upgrades that we need for longevity as far as the keyboard goes, but it's not the upgrade that we wanted. It's not the 14-inch screen with a possible dedicated graphics card. When they do that, that's gonna change the game. I don't know if Apple will, because it could cannibalize 16-inch MacBook Pro sales. Depends on how they cap it and what they allow you to do. But I would love to see that. And things are gonna get interesting once Apple starts putting their own chips inside of these MacBook Pros and iMacs and everything. So the future is bright, you know what I mean? Just weigh your options and make smart decisions. My name is CJ, this is CJ Knows Tech. I just wanted to offer up my 2 cents on the brand new MacBook Pros 13-inch in 2020, baby. Smash that sub button, smash that like button, and come back for more. I got you. Oh man. Hello? Who this? I know who it is. I saw the caller ID. What up, Tim Apple? What up, player? Hey, look, man. I just did a video about the MacBook Pro 13 inches. I ain't gonna lie. I'm not wild, player. But you gave it the upgrade that it needed most as far as longevity goes, and that's the keyboard. You know, we still want the 14-inch display. You know that, right? We still want improved speakers. We still want those new microphones that you gave to the MacBook Pro 16-inch. And we would love a dedicated graphics card. So player, when you got the scoop on that, can you hit me up? So I'm gonna need you to start giving me the same hookup and the same leaks that you're giving John Prosser, okay? What? Huh? You don't know who, man, quit playing, man, Tim, listen to me.